Welcome to the Dietitians Unplugged podcast with Aaron Flores and Glenys Oyston. Join us as we explore the idea of health and wellness from a new perspective. Each episode, we will discuss topics that will help you improve your health, body image, and fitness without obsessing on the scale or counting calories. We believe in health at every size, intuitive eating, and body positivity. And we want to help you build the confidence to ditch the scale, embrace your health, and unplug from the world of diets and body shame.
Welcome back for another episode of Dietitians Unplugged with Glenys and Aaron. We are back for lucky episode 9. 9 lives. We never thought we'd make it, did we?
Of course we did.
Of course we did. There's going to be like 900 of these, so just wait, people. So we are back. This is a really sort of very topical episode. We wanted to spend some time discussing all the news that came out after some research talking about The Biggest Loser, which is a reality show, for those of you who don't know, on NBC that focuses on really extreme weight loss over the course of a season. And contestants lose literally hundreds of pounds. And the research looked at some information over one season of contestants, looking at their weight loss and weight regain over the next 6 years. And it was reported in the New York Times. It was reported in a lot of different articles and media outlets. And we wanted to talk about some of those articles, but also share our thoughts on the show, what we learned from reading the articles, and things like that. So my first question is this. Glenys, when was the last time you actually watched The Biggest Loser?
So I have never watched The Biggest Loser, at least not an entire episode. I remember when it first started, and I was really in the throes of serious dieting at that time. But even then, I just thought, this is awful. Like, nobody should eat like this. I mean, never mind that I was eating pretty restrictively and exercising a lot more than I probably wanted to. But I just thought, this is awful and abusive and terrible, and I don't want to watch it. So I think that, I would always catch snippets of it as I was changing the channels or looking, waiting to watch the show that came on after it or something. And I'd see Jillian Michaels screaming at people and thinking, God, what a bitch. I mean, seriously, I don't think I would do anything this person said if she said it to me in that tone. So I have never seen a whole episode simply because I thought, even when I was a thin person and I was biased against bigger bodies, I just thought that was a horrible show. So have you ever watched it? I have
to confess, I did watch it. And I even watched it when I was studying to be a dietitian. I don't think once I became a dietitian, I realized this is the worst thing ever. I think I started watching it because I wanted to see if they had a registered dietitian on the show. And I was curious to see, who was giving nutrition advice, because that was really important to me at the time. And I sort of I'm not going to lie, I got sucked into the reality part of it. And I got sucked into the stories and to the personal accounts and all that. And I think I probably watched the first couple seasons. And then after that, I realized what was really going on. And there was no way I could watch it again. It upset me so much that people were actually still watching it for so many years after I stopped watching it, that I didn't really even know what to do with myself with that anger. Really, I didn't quite understand how people could really watch the show. And as I think about it now, what I find so offensive about the show is really how they put these people who are really suffering in life. I mean, really just going through all different types of struggles with accepting their bodies, being uncomfortable in their bodies, and they subject them to these rigors basically to break them in front of us. for our amusement. And I just find that unconscionable, and I find it's dehumanizing. And I feel just so sad thinking about what these people go through for the sake of a TV show. It really affects me.
Yeah, I mean, tragic is sort of the word. I mean, these people, first of all, they always find sort of the biggest people that they can, and then they shrink them to like completely unreasonable proportions. You know, it's like, and I think it's probably even harder after they put all the weight back on to have touched that sort of golden, like, oh, this is what it's like to have the body that everybody accepts and loves, and then to also lose it. I'm just wondering if that's even worse, is to have felt it, and then to have lost it again. Just from my own perspective, I do think there's a little bit of that where after I finished dieting or quit dieting and started to regain weight, it's like, oh, I went back to the weight that I had been, and I didn't completely hate my body at that weight. But now it's like, oh, but this is this thing it used to be, and now it's not that anymore. There's a whole lot of sadness, and I just wonder how much they go through. How much worse is are their lives after they gain the weight back? I wonder.
Right. And that's what sort of on some level, the main New York Times article that we're sort of going to talk about, it's called, Life After the Biggest Loser. And so many of them just talk about how no matter what they did, no matter how hard they tried, the weight just started slowly coming back. And you can almost hear the desperation and the sadness in their voices as they talk about how it was just out of their control at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they went home and then they just gave up. They're like, well, I'm just going to eat, just go back to the way I used to eat. It sounds like they really continued to try to maintain this weight, and they were expending Herculean efforts to sort of keep maintaining the weight. Like, the part of the article that describes how many hours a day this person exercised and what he ate. And when we were talking about this a little bit before the show, you said, now, if you take away, the weight part and not being able to see this person, they described what they were eating and how they were exercising, what would you say about them? And we both thought, like, eating disorder.
Right. So from the New York Times article, they're talking about Mr. Cahill, and they're actually talking about when he came home between, leaving the show and before the season finale, where it's like a live weigh-in. And the guy, Mr. Cahill, this was his routine. And let's just sort of forget that it's Mr. Cahill. Let's just listen to the routine. He would wake up at 5 a.m., and run on a treadmill for 45 minutes. Then he would have breakfast, which was typically 1 egg, 2 egg whites, and half a grapefruit, and a piece of sprouted grain toast. Next, he would run on the treadmill for another 45 minutes, rest for 40 minutes, ride his bike 9 miles to the gym, work out for 2.5 hours, shower, ride home, eat lunch, which was a grilled chicken breast, a cup of broccoli, and 10 spears of asparagus. He'd then rest for an hour, drive to the gym for another round of exercise.
And if this was a 20-year-old woman doing all of this, what would we say?
We would probably want to put her in some sort of eating disorder treatment center as soon as possible.
Right, exactly. So we're talking about a show that basically promotes eating disorder behavior.
Right.
At the,
at the expense of someone else's good health.
Exactly.
I mean,
and I know in the last few years, anytime if somebody has sort of spoken out about the show, and of course they all have to sign these, confidentiality agreements and non-disclosure agreements. And the few times somebody's spoken out, they've talked about like, oh, we've urinated blood. We've passed out from exhaustion and dehydration. I mean, it's not healthy at all.
No,
there's no health in this show.
Right. It's completely distorted. And again, that's what makes it so upsetting. So basically, the other quote from this New York Times article that I really want people to hear is something from the actual doctor who supervises the show. And let me just say this, like, if this is your job, supervising the show, I worry about you. I mean, like,
you're evil.
Yeah. I mean, it scares me a little bit. Anyway, he's basically, he refuted some of the results in the study, but basically he says, but he says maintaining weight loss is difficult, which is why he tells the contestants that they should exercise at least 9 hours a week and monitor their diets to keep the weight off. 9 hours a week, which is at least, right? Which is over an hour a day. And my response to that is, fuck you.
Right. And we're not talking like fun exercise or light exercise or moderate exercise. We're talking about extremely intense exercise that a lot of us don't want to do. Like, it's not like I maybe get sort of exercise. If you add up all my activities of daily living, it might come to maybe an hour a day.
Yeah.
But, I'll exercise maybe an hour a day all combined, like some walking around or whatever, and I like that. But we're not talking, I don't go to the gym every single day and, pant until I'm about ready to drop.
Right. And the way I sort of picture this is like, this doctor, his name is Robert Huizenga. I picture him like looking at the results of this study saying, well, I don't really believe some of the results. I know their metabolic rates are going to slow down a little bit, but I didn't think it would be this low. But, weight loss, but, maybe they're just not working hard enough. I told them that at least 9 hours a week is what they should be doing to keep the weight off and watching their diet. And maybe they're only doing 8 hours a week. And maybe that moved to 7. And maybe that moved to 6. But maybe they're just not doing enough.
Maybe they had to get jobs to support themselves and couldn't do 9 hours of intense exercise a week,
Or
essentially, you'd have to make this your full-time job.
Right. Or maybe they wanted to have lunch with a friend that wasn't a grilled chicken breast, 10 asparagus, and a cup of broccoli. Maybe they wanted some flexibility in their life. Maybe they didn't want to make being the Biggest Loser their job, like you said.
And what I liked about the study is that it actually measured their metabolism, their metabolic rates.
Yep.
And I'm going to assume that they did sort of an indirect calorimetry measurement, which is the gold standard of measuring metabolism. And they took their metabolisms before the show started, and they said they all had sort of normal metabolisms for people of their size and age. And then they took them, after the show at different points, and their metabolisms dropped dramatically. And it's important to know, for those of you who don't know, your metabolism is sort of your internal engine that is burning, it's sort of making you move and operate, and it's sort of burning the energy that comes in. And so all of a sudden, after they lost all this weight, their metabolisms just slowed way down and then stayed slow afterward until the end of the study, which was, I think, 6 years later. They didn't really recover, which was interesting.
Right. And what they found is that they all had metabolic rates that were significantly lower than other individuals their age and gender who had not lost weight. Right. So they for someone of like their size, they had, metabolic rates that were like 400 calories less a day or 300 calories less a day than someone of their similar size who hadn't lost weight. And that puts them, really behind the 8 ball when it comes to trying to maintain whatever sort of drastic weight loss they had achieved on the show.
Right. And I think what it also shows is that taking a fat person and turning them into a thin person, you don't end up with the same physiological being as a person who was never fat and was sort of a smaller size or a normal size, whatever you want to call it, their whole lives. You get a person who can eat a whole lot less once they've become thin or thinner. And so, I mean, you didn't just get a thin person, you got kind of a really hungry thin person.
Yeah.
That is going to have to work full time to stay that way. And we don't know, I mean, what the studies are sort of finding out now is that it's not even necessarily that healthy to do that. So
yeah,
it doesn't improve. It isn't necessary to improve your health.
Right.
And of course, what we know is that you just gain all the weight back anyway. So you end up at, square one as a fat person again.
Or higher, right? It's actually not square one. You probably square 10.
Exactly.
Because you've regained past where you started before you started to lose weight.
So Aaron, I know you and I went through the same dietetic internship. When you were an intern, did you get to do a research rotation where they measured your metabolism?
No, I'm so old that, we didn't know what the word metabolism was. No.
They didn't have that equipment back then.
They didn't have that equipment. We just, we had to chisel our papers on stone.
So when I went through my internship, not all that long ago, a little while ago, we had a research rotation where they actually measured our resting metabolic rate. So our metabolism, essentially, the bottom line of what your body needs sort of to operate. And I kept joking. I said, I probably got the metabolism of a chair. I had stopped diet. I hadn't been dieting for 2 years at that point. And there were 8 other people. And they all had, they're all younger. Most of them were thinner than me. Not all, but most of them. And I had no joke, I had the lowest metabolism. And I said, oh, I really do have the metabolism of a chair. And I swear, I don't know what it was before I started dieting, but I do think, for my resting metabolic rate to be that low had to have been something to do with starving myself for so many years.
Right.
So I was a little dismayed at that. I was like, oh, well, I know I eat more than that many calories. So, and there's no way I could get by on fewer calories than what I eat because I eat, to satisfy my hunger. And so it was a little dismaying to think, oh my God, I did that to myself.
Yeah. And which is a common thing I hear all the time working with clients is that the frustration that, if I just hadn't done this, right? If I hadn't started this diet cycle, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be where I am today. And my response to that is, but you are here, right? And what you're taking so much experience from there, and we're just using that as a learning tool. We're not, we can beat ourselves up for the mistakes we've made in the past, but on some level we need to accept accept our bodies for all that it is, pluses and minuses. And when we really get to that level of acceptance is when all these behaviors that we're trying to help people adopt, regardless of the number on the scale, that's when those things really become important and of value, and we do them because we love honoring our body.
Yeah, and part of giving up dieting, I think, is dealing with the regret of how we kind of feel like, and we did that to ourselves, and just coming, around to acceptance of like, hey, this is the culture we live in. I didn't just operate in a vacuum.
Absolutely.
So, but here we have like a show like The Biggest Loser promoting that culture.
Yeah.
So that's where I get really angry.
Absolutely. Listen, I mean, I think what's interesting about this is that there's a couple of quotes also in this first New York Times article that came out where they're actually talking to different doctors who are in like obesity prevention, which is another word I hate. But basically talking about how, listen, we can interpret these results that our metabolism is going to be forever slower. and we're doomed to battle the biology. But are we? Basically, he says we shouldn't look at these results to mean that we are doomed to battle our biology or remain fat. It means we need to explore other approaches, which is a really big misstep for me. Because there it's like he's saying, yeah, it's really unfortunate, these results, but it just means we need to find a better solution.
Yeah, as one of my friends on Facebook said, that was the moment in the article where they're like, P.S. we still hate you.
Right.
P.S. don't you dare remain fat. Think you can remain fat. The frustrating part of that was that there was no mention that there might be this alternative where you accept your body,
right,
and move forward from there and try to do healthy things for the size that you are.
Absolutely.
And that was the biggest frustration, I think, for everybody in the Health at Every Size community, where they kind of posted this article and they were like, oh, look, scientists tell us what we've already known for years. And they still draw the conclusion that we're still going to try and turn you from fat people into thin people, no matter what the cost.
Right. Right. How many people talked to you about this article after it came out? Like non-dietitian people, non-Health at Every Size people. How many people just in your sort of social world brought it up that they read this article, and what do you think?
Well, it was mostly Health at Every Size people that sort of passed that article around.
Okay.
But I did see it pop up here and there. I think for non-dietitians and non-Health at Every Size people, I seem to see that article everywhere for the week after it came out.
Yeah, I saw it. It was basically on so many posts on my Facebook feed, my social media feed. Yeah, I saw it everywhere. Here's what's interesting to me. I had a lot, not a lot, but I'm a handful of friends and family start talking to me about this article. Like, oh my God, did you read this article about The Biggest Loser? I totally thought of you when I read this. Did you know that this is what happens? And like, they were shocked. They were like, and a part of me was like, well, haven't you ever heard what I've said before? like this. Yes, I've known this. Yes, this is what I'm talking about. This is why I don't want you to ever go on a diet. This is why I don't want you to think about restricting food. This is why I want you to learn to embrace your body and all the great things that it can do today, not the things that you want it to do tomorrow when you lose 10 pounds. And to me, it's great that this article came out because I think it exposed this idea, whether that New York Times article had Health at Every Size in it or not, it at least exposed so many people to the idea that, oh, maybe this really is true. If the New York Times says, that I might want to reconsider that diet I'm doing, maybe it's time for me to listen.
Exactly. I mean, it sort of takes something extreme like this for people to believe you. It's sort of like, unless there's this gigantic expose, everybody's like, yeah, it says don't diet. Yeah, don't lose weight. Yeah. And then it's like, no, here's the proof. And it's not even actually that good of a study, and that they didn't use a control group. And, there's a lot of things wrong with it. I think it provided valuable data.
Sure. And what's the end?
I'm glad it came out, but I think that, it's something sensational,
right?
And people can grab onto it. And yeah, definitely a few people that I went to school with posted the article to me. They're like, we thought of you immediately. And I was a little bit proud because I got through to people,
right?
that at least they remembered me when this came along.
I mean, I think this is what helps bring the ideas that we are trying to promote into the mainstream just a little bit more. And, I think the helpful thing from my end is more people are thinking about it, more people are questioning it, and it gives us, you and I, more tools to help really open up people's eyes to this reality.
Exactly. And even though, like I said, it's not that great of a study, you can then say, but there are all these other really good studies to show that this does happen. And I think one thing that we have to talk about is I think, and some people did bring this up on social media. They said, well, what about, maybe this just happened to them because of the extreme way that they dieted and lost weight. And another article that was on the New York Times was called "Why You Can't Lose Weight on a Diet." Basically, the author of that article looked at a lot of different studies and said it turns out the rate at which you lose the weight doesn't kind of matter. It's the same result in the end, that whether you do it sort of the slow, sensible way, using air quotes around that, or you do it the hard and fast way, the Biggest Loser way, the results tend to be the same, that most people regain all of their weight or more at the end. And I thought that was pretty interesting, because I did definitely think that the way, I used to think before I came into this health at every size world, I thought, well, the way they're doing it is just so wrong. There's a better way to do this. And of course, I know that way, but it turns out, no, it doesn't really matter which way you lose weight, that your metabolism slows down and the weight comes back.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, again, maybe it's just more opportunities for people to be exposed to this idea. And I think that's really important for us.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'll use any tool to get the message across, and this is a great one now that we have. So
yeah. So there was a health at every size expert who did sort of make it into some articles discussing this study, and it was Dr. Deb Burgard, who is in California. She's a psychologist, and I think she's one of the co-founders of ASDA, which is I'm going to get the acronym wrong, so correct me, Glenys. Association for Size, Diversity, and
Health.
There you go.
Yes.
Thank you. But she had some really great quotes in this article, and I wanted to highlight one of them where she says, she has this really great quote that I wanted to highlight, and it says, "Making people truly healthier will require abandoning weight as the gold standard of well-lived life and respecting the diversity of people's body sizes. That shift would be an epic change. It would prevent harmful interventions to make everyone one size, and it would prevent the harm from social rejection and discrimination based on weight," which is what, those of us in the Health at Every Size movement are really striving for. And I think it eloquently says what we are passionate about and what we are hopeful for in this paradigm shift.
Well said.
Yeah. And it's great that, again, she could get quoted in an article that was referencing this topic, and it's, again, more sort of information out into the mainstream for people who have never heard of Health at Every Size, or think it's just people who are using it as an excuse to give up and not do anything and just say, no, I'm going to be this size and nothing's going to happen. No, it's the complete opposite. It's, I'm going to be this size and I'm going to do really positive things for my body because I deserve it, and no one can oppress me because of my size.
Exactly. I mean, it all comes back to the message needs to be, that the way we regard fat bodies is horrible and bigoted and oppressive, and it's making nobody healthier. So why are we still tackling the same way over and over again?
Right.
So
let's just beat our head against the wall a little bit harder.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And I do think it comes back to an issue of bigotry. I think that we have turned disliking fat bodies. For when I was young, nobody ever said, "Oh, you're fat and unhealthy." Nobody gave a shit about health, but over the years, I think people started to maybe realize, like, oh, well, if we don't come up with a reason for hating fat bodies, then we might get called, bigots, which we are. So it becomes about health all of a sudden. Oh, but we hate fat bodies because they're unhealthy. So, I mean, it's a real problem that as long as that continues, we're going to fuel the diet culture, which is making people sicker and unhealthier and probably fatter.
Right. And if you sort of use that lens that you just said, and we put that back on the show, The Biggest Loser, and we think of it as, you know, this bigotry towards heavier people. I mean, how can you watch it? How can you even allow that show to be on for another season?
I wonder how this will impact it.
I hope it will go bye-bye. I mean, I really do.
Yeah.
I really hope that, you know, this will be the nail in the coffin. But you know what? I would not be surprised if the opposite happened. If it became more popular than ever, because it gives them a way to say, no, we have come up with this Biggest Loser 2.0, and it's a much better system now. And instead of, you know, working out until they pee blood, we're going to work out until, you know, they stop peeing altogether. And that is going to be,
they sweat blood.
and they sweat blood, and you are going to love it, because we are going to see emotions. We're going to see, you know, people making realizations about all these things about their body and their relationships with food. And we are going to fix the fat bodies right in front of your eyes.
Well, and what you just said has a new horror has dawned for me, which is I think that they might start co-opting the language of body positivity all of a sudden.
Right.
They're going to go from being abusive to being like, no, you know, it's loving weight loss, which is complete and utter bullshit too. But so that's kind of now my worst nightmare that I'm sure I'm going to live to see soon.
So what if Oprah buys a stock in Biggest Loser?
Oh my God, Aaron, don't make it worse.
That could be the second sign of the apocalypse.
Oh God, you know, it's kind of funny. What's happened to Oprah, by the way? She's kind of dropped out of the press. I mean, honestly, where is she? Which reminds me, that's sort of how I always thought about The Biggest Loser too. It's like, where do these winners go? I feel like they disappear, you know,
right
after the show, and you never hear from them again. I mean, maybe they go on like this victory lap tour. I don't know, but I was trying to sort of Google the one from a few years ago that sort of her big reveal at the end was that she, everybody was shocked at how thin she had gotten.
Right.
And that there was a lot of backlash around that. And I was thinking like, well, where is she now kind of thing? So she has a Facebook page, but not too many recent photos. And so I'm just wondering what she's going through right now. She's sort of the one that sticks out in my mind the most. I couldn't name another Biggest Loser winner.
The only one that comes to mind is she is on Facebook and has a pretty active sort of anti Biggest Loser page, is Kai Hibbard, and I think she's from season 3, and she's pretty active in speaking out against the show and has been for quite some time.
Right, and that's maybe the way you come back is, oh look, and I'm still fat, or I got fat again, and that was an awful experience and whatever. Otherwise, I think maybe a lot of people go into hiding as well because they probably feel like gigantic failures.
Right.
You know?
Right. You know, you just mentioned like that season where they did sort of, in essence, say this person went too far, which is, again, the same type of shaming. Not okay.
Right. First it's you're too fat, and now it's you're too thin. It's right. Like, well, you really can't please anybody, can you?
Which is, you know, equally unacceptable. Like, commenting about people's body like that is unacceptable. And the sooner we can accept that and wrap our heads around that, the better off we're going to be.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, my plea to everybody is, please just stop watching the show if you are watching it. It's horrible, and it's you know, it fuels fat bigotry, and it fuels diet culture, and it just fuels all the worst things about our society, I feel like. So please stop watching it.
Yeah, that if there's, you know, one thing you can do for us, aside from giving us some ratings, which, you know, I think we were up to like 16 or 17, we're pretty much failing on our challenge here.
That's not going to get anybody embarrassing pictures, people.
Yeah.
You've got to try a little bit harder.
But if you're not going to give us a rating, well, at least change the channel and take The Biggest Loser off of your TiVo list or DVR list.
Right, exactly. Speaking of our challenge, just to reiterate, our challenge was to get 100 ratings. And honestly, I'm not even sure if I care that they're good now. After a week after we released our last episode, we only got 5 more ratings.
Hey, but 5 is better than 0.
That's true. Thank you to those people who gave us ratings.
Right. I mean, I will take those 5 gladly.
Yeah. And so the deal was 100 ratings. Honestly, if we get within 75% of that, I will put up some very embarrassing big hair 80s photos on our Facebook page.
Okay.
And Aaron will too.
Totally. And I might even do like an 80s dance. I might put on some AHA and do a little video and dance for you guys.
Oh my God. I would pay money to see that.
I had some 80s moves. That's the only generation that I have moves in. I can't do anything else.
They were very good specific moves back then.
They were so easy.
Yeah. So now we've upped the ante a little bit.
Yeah.
Aaron will post, a video doing his 80s dance moves. And my big hair, I mean, it's a great package. Just give us a rating.
Just give us a rating.
Let us know what you think about us. We read them and we will take them into consideration when we're creating content and being goofballs.
But that being said, I mean, even though we'd only have a few ratings, I mean, I think I would also say that for the people that have reached out to us and sent us either an email or just gave us a message on Facebook or even just shared an episode with someone, we really want to thank you. I mean, we've gotten nothing but really positive response to this so far, and it's nice to know that people are listening and getting something from it. And I've said it once, I'll say it again. This has been some of the most professional fun I've had in my entire life. And so I love that people are enjoying it.
This is absolutely the most gratifying thing I think I've ever done too. And to be honest, when we first started and I said to you, hey, let's do a podcast, I really thought inside, kind of died a little bit inside and said, oh, what am I thinking? I don't want to do a podcast. But actually, it has been so much fun and we've learned so much. And we're at number 9.
Yeah.
So that's pretty awesome. And we've had fun. And yeah, we love interacting with you guys. I love getting posts on Facebook and answering questions or emails. And, I just love seeing the activity out there.
And we will, our next episode is going to be, we're actually going to have our first guest. So we're very excited about that. We're going to have Vivian McMaster on, who I'm not going to actually say much more. She is a photographer and does some really cool work, but you're going to have to tune in to learn more about what she does and why it's so important and why we would like to share her work with you.
Yeah, and we can't wait because it's our first guest.
It's our first guest, yeah. We're going to ask her the meaning of life and see what she says.
Oh, I hope she's prepared for that.
I hope so, too. Do your homework, Vivian.
We can't wait to have you. Well, it's time to end this episode.
Yep.
It's been good talking about this, getting our frustrations out about The Biggest Loser.
Absolutely.
So if you needed more proof to not diet, this is it. Don't diet.
So thanks for tuning in to episode 9. We'll be back again with another episode very shortly. Thanks for listening to the Dietitians Unplugged podcast with Aaron and Glenys.